Hi, and welcome back to Soaring Profits Thursday Night Live, where we tell the stories that people rarely hear. Tonight's story is going to be a hard one. It's also going to be a joyous one. But first, it's going to be tough. Uh, if you've dealt with grief in your life, which most people have, this is an important story. Not only is Karen someone who has dealt with a lot of grief and tragedy in her life, but also she has come out the other end to join the Compassionate Friends of Canada, the Waterloo chapter. Her and two friends who also have had tragedy and lost children form the Waterloo side of that. Unfortunately, when Karen's young child, Zach, was born, he was born with not a fully developed heart. And the good news is that he was able to survive that. People were able to help him. But then later on, in 2018, at the age of 14, her daughter Lauren passed away of leukemia. Dealing with that grief and tragedy, Karen, with the utmost strength, the wonderful woman that she is, was able to write a book discussing that. And to be able to write a book like discussing that not only is super important for other people to hear it and learn from it, but it's also very empowering that anyone would be able to do that. Almost finished the book. In 2023, at the age of 34, her stepdaughter, Sarah, passed away from breast cancer. So she knew she had to include that also in her book. So she added to the end of her book. During all that, she was still helping others learn how to grieve, how to deal with loss, how to have important discussions with each other and raise each other up. And you guys all know that on Soaring Profits, we're all about raising each other up. And this is why we tell these stories. This is why it's so important that we talk and we don't avoid topics like grief or sexual assault or anything else. Karen, I just want to say I'm very sorry for all your losses and all your tragedies. I am so happy you're on the show. This is a very important topic to me. It's a very important topic to Pat, which you'll hear very soon. And I'm so glad you're on the show. And I really am sorry for your loss. Now, this is a hard question. It befuddles me. I could not imagine a daughter at the age of 14 worried about your son. You have the strength and the fortitude to share your story in a book. How do you do that? How do you go from dealing with the tornado around you and narrow it down into words so other people can learn from it?
Mhm. Well, first of all, thank you for that wonderful introduction, James. I appreciate all your lovely words. Uh, as far as bringing that all together, um, one thing that I've learned is that everyone grieves differently, and grief can be so varied due to the fact of the type of relationship with the person that you had, whether it was a grandparent or a parent. Definitely with the loss of a child, it's so untimely and traumatic. Um, you just, it's just so different. And with the Compassionate Friends of Canada and our Waterloo region, it's a peer support group. And we all come together so that we're able to support each other individually and as a group. We're not counselors, but we talk about how do we get through this? What do we do to get through it? We're not going to get past it. It's not going to be over. We might not heal from it, but we live with it. It becomes part of our lives. At the same time, there has to be some kind of release, and that's my experience. That's my personal experience. I needed some kind of release, and whether that's crying and screaming in the shower or not being able to get up for a number of days, and maybe the grief overtakes you a year later, um, or maybe you sit down with a pen and paper, and that's how I started. I started to write down how I was feeling. The words would come to me, and sometimes those words were already in notes that I'd written. I jotted them down on my phone. Some of those things came from posts on Facebook throughout the journey that we had with Lauren when she was sick with cancer and through all of her treatments. But as I pulled all of those things together and gleaned them and took the best parts, other words started to flow. And I found that it was so cathartic. And in the beginning, I wasn't sure if it was something that I needed to share, but eventually it did become that. It felt like I needed to share that. And grief, again, being so personal, if either of you has experienced grief, you may find that your story is something that you hold close. Maybe you hold it in your heart, and that's where you need to keep it because that's what you need. For me, I needed to tell the story. I needed to get it out there. And I think and I hope that what I put down in those pages, the story that I've told, can bring some sort semblance of hope that there is something on the other side. There is still loss and there's still sadness, but we're still here on the other side. I think part of that book too has been highlighting how people helped us throughout the grief that we were experiencing and what we went through with Zach. That was a grieving too in a lot of ways.
So Karen, obviously, thank you so much for joining us. And we had a brief little opportunity to chat kind of in the green room backstage before we came out here and just kind of listening to your story. And I wanted to ask a few questions in regards to a little bit deeper into kind of that process. James kind of highlighted that, but maybe you can take us through a bit of a journey of your process. How did this all come? Where does it start? And then we'll kind of get into where you are now. Because the beautiful thing about what you're doing now is kind of the rebound from this and helping other people and building. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the harder stuff at the very beginning.
The harder stuff with the grief and when Lauren passed away, that's specifically what you're talking about?
Well, so a little bit more about in regards to the entire process. So tell us a little bit more about your family unit. What does that look like? And then we'll roll from there.
Absolutely. So, my husband and I met early 90s. We kind of figured right away it was meant to be. And when we decided to build a family, it was okay, let's do this. We're gonna have a son. Theo was the sweetest, just the perfect baby, as most first babies seem to be, because if they aren't, why would anyone want to do it again? Yeah. But then when Zach came along, we were shocked that within a day he was exhibiting signs of struggling to breathe, and we didn't know what that was. The hospital here in Cambridge was doing tests and x-rays, etc., and the pediatrician said this is a heart issue, so we've got to take him to sick kids right away. So we spent the next, in essence, year living in Toronto. We were uprooted right away, and I had to take Theo with me. He was barely 2 years old, and my days were now at sick kids, sitting beside a bed where my child, who I hadn't been able to hold, was covered with wires and leads and IVs, whatever was needed to keep him alive. His heart was failing, and we found out that without a transplant that he wouldn't survive.
Wow.
So after 9.5 weeks of waiting, and there was times when he had to go down to critical care, times when he was back up in his room, but I couldn't pick him up without having a nurse's help. So
Wow.
a lot of people don't understand what that's like, because you have a new baby. The first thing you do is you're holding them.
That's right.
And for us and for any other family that's gone through this type of medical issue at birth, you cannot hold your child. You need help. You need someone to adjust the wires. You need someone to help put him or her in your arms. You're watching a monitor all the time. I'm watching to see if his heart rate is okay. I'm watching to see if his respirations are okay. I'm hoping that he's going to survive this call that
Wow.
someone else has lost a child.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's and then and how do you deal with that? And that in itself was a grieving process because we had lost the wonderful first few months with our child that should have been taking him home right away. That should have been filled with nestling together in bed and cuddling this newborn baby, being able to feed him right there, changing diapers, showing him off to friends and family. We couldn't do that. Not
Yeah.
that way.
Right.
Survived. He survived that. We got through that. It wasn't all wonderful. It was
Yeah.
in the beginning trips to sick kids weekly. We were going weekly, and I was driving him there, and it's a 2-hour drive from where we are, driving him back, and that's a newborn in a car who's not feeling great all the time. We made it through, and he went through school. When he was 3, we had another child, and that's our Lauren. Lauren, spunky, amazing kid. I mean, she was the younger sister of 2 brothers, so she forged her way. She made sure that she was known. Like, she was just unbelievable when it came to speaking up for herself. Amazingly proud we were. And the one story I always tell is walking through a grocery store, and we're at the dairy aisle, and I'm just trying to get out of there, trying to pick the yogurt or whatever I was buying. And she said, Mom, that milk over there, it's expired. And I said, well, yeah, but you know what? They've got staff here, and someone will take care of it. Don't worry about it. Mom, they need to know. Lauren, it's okay. Well, she walked over, she found someone who worked in the dairy aisle, and she brought them over and told them, you need to take that off the shelf. That's expired. Get that off of her right now. This is a 4-year-old. So
Wow.
and she carried that through. She carried that through.
Yeah.
That was her personality. Obviously, we were devastated when she was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 12.
Wow.
It was we thought she had beat it. We were given accolades for her doctor, to the fact that the doctor figured it out so quickly. There were these signs that didn't make any sense, and when we started to put them together, okay, we need to get some tests done.
Yeah.
And she was supposed to do 2 years and 3 months of treatment. 3 months shy of finishing that treatment, because of and it wasn't actually leukemia that killed her. It was just because of chemotherapy.
Mm.
Her immune system was lowered, and she ended up with a septic infection. So she went very quickly. We were not expecting it. So traumatic, to be watching our daughter
Right.
being worked on. It was like watching some awful movie.
Yeah.
You know.
I couldn't imagine how powerless you would feel in that moment where this young lady who you're protecting, that must have been very traumatic. I'm so sorry that you went through that.
And you just said the word protecting, and that is so important, because as a parent, that is your number one job. Love and protect. And when you're put in a position where you cannot protect your child, and that's what happens with medical issues.
Right.
You do your best, and the doctors are there, the nurses are there, but you feel so powerless against a disease, but against a malformation. Yeah. And so the words started to flow for me after that. And it was a few months after Lauren passed that I got a message from a woman who, and I think she had found me on a Facebook group for the Compassionate Friends, the national group.
Right.
And she said, there isn't one in this area. Are you interested in starting one with me?
Wow.
And at first I wasn't sure. I had already gone to a very specific bereavement group for parents who had lost children to cancer. And that was it was offered through McMaster Hospital. That's where Lauren had all of her treatments done. And I felt very strongly at that point about these are my people.
Right.
My people are parents who have gone through cancer treatments with their children.
Right.
But I entertained the idea. I met with this person. She had another friend who lost a daughter, and the three of us had lost daughters. And then understanding the impact and the need, we thought, let's do it. We've got this Compassionate Friends umbrella to work under. They have a framework that they've been building since the late 60s. That group started in Britain after two sets of parents happened to meet in a hospital after they both lost children. And that's where that group started. And it has grown internationally. In Canada, it began out west. There's a lot more chapters out west, but it is slowly moving eastward. But there are chapters in every province in Canada currently. So in 2019, we started our chapter, November of that year. We were really unsure what to expect. We put ads in the newspaper. We did a radio spot. We had 25 parents show up that night.
Wow.
25 parents, which that's a lot of people. And we're now realizing there's more than that. But again, everybody needs something different. So I think we've connected with 200 parents over the year since we started in 2019.
That's
so
amazing.
200 parents who have either connected with us in person, they've come to one of our group gatherings, or they've connected on our Facebook group, or they have just connected by email, and sometimes seek out support through a connection with another person. Let's go out for coffee.
Right.
Let's sit and chat for a bit. I've talked to parents on the phone. Yeah, and it's very important and powerful and wonderful. And when we come together, we say, we're sorry that we're all here together, but we're also grateful that we have each other. And that's the power of being together as parents who have lost children. And it can be from any reason. It can be at any age. Parents who have lost a child after a miscarriage. Elderly parents who have lost their child. Maybe their child was 50 years old and they were 70, but that's still their child. Absolutely. Who died before they did. That's an out of order death.
Right. So Karen, obviously this is a group of people that are working together, drawing on each other for support, working through. You can't even fathom, like for someone like myself or James, you can't even fathom the pain, the trauma, the experience that is. How does your organization reach out and work with these people? What sort of resources? Or is it kind of like we are the community, we come together as the community? What does it look like? Are you bringing outside people in? Do you have counseling? How does that sort of work?
Yes, we do have a group of professionals that we can draw on if we need to. We will often invite professionals in if we decide that that's something that the group wants. Maybe it's a grief counselor. We've had a psychic medium come in. We had someone come in that does Reiki. There's all kinds of different avenues to explore. And basically, we're looking for what types of things do you feel might be helpful for you? And we've done surveys to find out what are you looking for? How can we help you? People find us through connections. Most often lately, it seems people are finding the national website, and then I'll get a call. If it's someone in the Waterloo region, then I'll get a phone call from someone, or we'll get emails from people saying, I've just lost a child, or my friend just lost a child. How can I support them? When are your group meetings? That type of thing. One thing about the Compassionate Friends is that it is a monthly gathering There is no end date. Anyone can come, meaning that any parent can come at any gathering. You don't have to be there every month. For counseling sessions,
Right.
or there are organizations that do very closed-ended sessions, which are very helpful as well, but they might be an 8-week, and then we're done. You have to register. Maybe you have to pay a fee, and then that session, that time is allotted and done. Compassionate Friends, there's no membership fee. You can just come that night of the gathering and be there, and maybe not come back for another 6 months.
Right.
It's come when you need us. Yeah.
So this is something that you've built. You're building the Waterloo chapter of this, and then you find yourself yet again struck by grief and trauma and needing these services for your family again.
Yes, yeah, that's right. We unfortunately, my stepdaughter Sarah was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was Christmas of 2020, and she went through a harrowing treatment, and unfortunately it metastasized to her liver. So she was cancer-free for about a year, and then found out just this past October, after dealing with some back pain, that unfortunately this back pain was cancer spots in her liver. And it was only a few short months later that she passed. It was a very difficult, again, very different from what we experienced with Lauren, because we knew at this time, the doctors told us and told her that there's nothing that can be done. We can try little things, but basically it's just comfort. So then essentially we were waiting for someone to die.
Yeah. Karen, for those of you that are joining us, thank you from all the LinkedIn folks. We're going to start throwing up some comments and questions and that sort of thing here. Karen, your story, the story of losing a child, so many of us have our children at home and we can give them that hug at night. And that just we don't understand. We have no depth of understanding of what that feels like. And tonight was going to be a very difficult conversation. And like I said before, as I thank you for coming, because there's going to be people out there tonight that have never heard this before. You read it in the newspaper, you hear it from a friend of a friend of a friend who had something traumatic and tragic happen. And all of a sudden you're going, holy crap, this is their story. This is Karen right in front of us now. And this is a hard one, but this is where we talk about the new beginnings and what you're building and now with what you're helping. So maybe you can tell me some of the stories of the successes that you've been able to put with your organization and what you're building in the Waterloo and that area.
I guess the successes would be that we have become a family.
Right.
We have become a community. Everyone that comes in is greeted warmly and with compassion, hence the name. Sometimes there's people that we don't see again, and we understand that means that they have taken what we've given, and that's what they've needed, and they've perhaps been able to move on. So I would definitely call that a success. It's such a hard thing to measure, because I don't want to say that our success is in the number of people that come to us, because that means there's that many children who have died.
Right.
But I feel like our success is just that people know that we're there, and people find us, and people are grateful that they have someone that understands. And that's the biggest thing, because quite often people lose close friends, people around them who they thought they could rely on, because grief changes you so much. You can become a very different person after you've lost a piece of you.
Right.
And I don't know how else to explain it, but people sometimes don't get that, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
That I may have changed because of my grief. I will say that I have been very fortunate. We had people come back to us when we experienced Lauren's death.
Yeah.
People who had been friends of ours and had moved on because maybe the friendship was because of our children. But they came back to us. But that's not everyone's experience. Some
Right.
people lose family and friends because those family and friends don't understand what's happened. And I don't want anyone to understand completely what's happened, but I would hope that people would have the grace to accept that we're different.
So Karen, in an experience like that, do you think that some people just don't know how to engage anymore? Because again, I think that this is such a heavy situation. And again, we warned everybody tonight that this was going to be a topic of great depth and that heartfeltness. And we don't shy away from that with what we've done before in the past and our topics. But this is a conversation that is hard. And I can only imagine being your friend, being someone that you went to high school with, and, we'd catch up and have a beer at the local thing. And then I hear through the grapevine that that Karen's had this tragedy, this trauma, this situation. And how do I engage you? How do I do that? Maybe you can tell me a little bit about some of those experiences, because obviously these are very real situations that you've come in contact with.
Absolutely. I think one of the big things is that I love when people ask me about Lauren and Sarah.
Right.
I want people to ask. And it's not that I want to bend your ear for 2 hours about them, maybe just an hour. But
right. But that's the smile of a mother. That's the pride of a parent. That's that pride of the mother. And I love that. And that's beautiful. Yeah. That's so, you can touch that. You can feel that. That's so tangible. But I could see where it would also be difficult.
Before the show in the green room, you were talking about how you wrote the book and that the professor friend read the book. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's exactly what you and Pat are talking about right now.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about how you want to share that joyful side of the story now. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't always the case. Maybe explain that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. The skeleton of the book, if you will, started with all of the pain that I was feeling and living after I'd lost my daughter. And I was writing it out. That's what helped me. And I would write and I would look through Facebook posts back on things that had happened. And I was bringing it all together. And I was writing about Zach. And I was writing about Theo, our eldest, who has also experienced a medical issue. It was life-threatening. Anyway, I'll put that aside for now. Writing all of those horrible, traumatic things that we'd gone through, and I sent it to her, and her response was, there's so much joy that you've experienced. And she said, if this book is just for you, if it's just because you needed to get that out, then it's perfect the way it is. But if you're going to share it somehow, then there's something missing. And she said the joy is what's missing. Yeah. Because she had known us. She's known us for 25 years. She knew our story. She knew about the camping trips that we used to take. She knew about all of the fun and the laughter that is part of our family. So she said, you need to put that in there. And so I made a very concerted effort to insert the joy. And I actually made a little jar called Inserting the Joy. And I would write little pieces, little snippets that would come to mind and put them on the paper and put them in the jar. And that jar is still sitting there. There's not a lot in there, but it inspired me. It helped me to bring those pieces out. And then I started putting that into what is now the finished product.
That's amazing. Not only have you helped, like you said, 200 people. I think that's a beautiful story in itself. But I think the whole concept of grief and putting back in the joy. I lost my parents when I was 26 and 27, back to back kind of deal. And for a long time, I didn't grieve them. I didn't even know how to grieve them. I didn't even know I wasn't grieving them, to be honest. And so I started like having flashbacks and memories. And at first it was the pain. It was all pain, right? But you're right. When I started healing, it was when I was started remembering the joy. Is that a big part of what you guys talk about? Like, I'm sure at first when someone comes, they tell their story about, you know, what they went through the surgeries, the leukemia, the pain and stuff like that. But do you get to a point where it's like, my daughter was so beautiful? Like you just told us an amazing story about your daughter at 4 years old. It was such a beautiful story. Is that what it kind of turns into, that you start like spreading the joy?
It does. It does. It can be very heavy, um, but it does turn into that. And we're very, we recognize that there are times when people need what the heaviness. We need to let that out. But there are other times when let's see a picture. Let's talk about the 5 greatest things about your child. What are the best memories that you have? And we definitely try to balance that out. Even though we do set a topic for each one of our gatherings, the tag after that is whatever comes up, and whatever we talk about is what's meant to be. So we're definitely not sticking to, you know, tonight we're only talking about this part of grief. No, this is what
Right.
might be the opening. This is what might get us talking. But if it takes us somewhere completely different, then that's where we were supposed to go.
You folks are the soaring prophets of the grief.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible because it's totally true. Grief comes in waves. It is the oddest thing I've ever dealt with in my life. Obviously, I'm not comparing your journey to mine. It's not even remotely the same, but it does come in waves. And, you know, you can, like, I don't know, there was a moment when I forgot. There was a moment when I started laughing again. And at that moment, I tore myself down because I allowed myself to laugh. Is that something that you guys deal with and go through? And how do you overcome that? Like that was such a big thing for me, that, you know, I was starting to enjoy life again and I was guilty for it.
Absolutely, that is a big topic, because you feel I'm supposed to be sad. I've
Yeah.
lost a big part of my life, and then all of a sudden you step out of that somehow, and laughter, and then you feel awful. But then you feel like, what does that mean? I've forgotten? No, I don't want to forget them, and it doesn't mean you've forgotten them. It just means that you've been able to, I don't know, put it together. Like you live with the pain and the sorrow and the happiness and the joy all in one somehow. And that is so profound, but it's real. It's so real.
So my experience, Karen, I recently lost my father about a year ago, just over a year ago. And like I said earlier, is that having that discussion on going and dealing with all of that. And my father was my best friend. He was all these things, this pillar that was, but so different than losing a child. And I remember going through a period of time when grieving, and hey, who knows, maybe a lot of people might say that I haven't totally finished that process and likely never will. But for myself, it was a situation in which I'm like, okay, my father would not want me to do X, Y, and Z. He would want me to continue moving on with my life and doing all these things. And that was a big part of that.
Yeah.
With a child, like I keep coming back to that because of the loss of a child and the community, the view of what you should do or what you think you should do that the community expects from you when you lose a child. Like what? You should never move on. You should never stop grieving. You should always wear black everywhere you go.
Mm.
That would be such a difficult process to kind of traverse through your real grieving and wondering what's next and all that. And that's why I say it's a beautiful thing that you have this community that 200 people have come together where you can experience this, where you can talk and you can go, my process looked a little different from your process, but the community accepted me either way. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing with the child that I think would be so much more difficult is how, why, what's next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And as I explained before, the the group that we have is so varied. Young parents who have lost a child to older parents who have lost an adult child, and the different ways that we've lost people, and just understanding how unique each one of us, each journey is for us. And we do talk about the expectations that society might have, the expectation. I think I, speaking for myself, I think from the most part, people haven't expected me to still be sad. But I do get the, you're so strong, like, how did you do that? How did you get through that? And
Yeah.
I had no choice. I
Right.
wasn't given a choice. You just do what you have to do. And when you're in that, you're not thinking about it that way. At least I wasn't. But I think my experience is that people expect that, oh, it's been X number of months or X number of years. Surely they've forgotten about it now and they're moving on and everything's okay. And
Right.
no, it's okay that I'm not okay. And that's a book title. um,
Right.
but that's so true. It is okay that you're not okay. It's
Mhm.
understandable that there is grief and that you live with it. Um,
Yeah.
it's what we do. It's what we do. We just keep moving.
It's absolutely okay, and it's okay. I think it's great that people can come and go, and there's no time limits and stuff like that. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, I'll be walking along, having a great time, and I'll see something, or I'll smell something, or I'll hear something, or it could be anything. And next
Mhm.
thing you know, you're on your knees crying, and to be able to stand up from that and go to the group you're talking about and walk in, and everyone understand. Like, I think what you've built, just that part of what you've built, like, that's only one fraction of the
Mhm.
Karen story of what she built. And I think it's beautiful because you have basically built, and this is going to sound cheesy, but I'm a cheesy guy. You've built the Cheers. You built a place that everyone knows your name and that you can feel
Yeah.
happy and safe no matter what happens. You can come in, you can cry, you can rage, and people will understand. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to get to your book. We just put up the link. Well, Sia was wonderful. Sia is one of the people who helps us out all the time. She's a wonderful woman. So
Thank you.
Lisa Browning, I think she was part of your journey in writing a book. She has been the part of the Soaring Prophets journey as well.
Mhm.
There's been a few of our guests that quite a few of our guests that she's brought us. You are one of the people that she has brought us. She's a wonderfully talented woman that, much like you, lifts other people's up and helps them to share their stories. So you finished writing like ripples in a pond,
Mhm.
and there was joy in it, which is lovely. Uh, and so, at what point did Lisa get involved, and what were the next steps for your book?
Uh, I think I connected with Lisa back in November, and she was referred to me by a dear friend who is a psychic medium, and he had written a couple of books, and she was the person that he went to for his most recent book.
Mhm.
But I said, hey, how did this process work? And he said, this is the lady. This is the lady, and he sent
Yep.
me her name. And so then I started to read a little bit about her. I looked at her website. I loved her message. And much like your message here on Soaring Profits, that everyone has a story. And it doesn't matter that you are not Raquel Welch or whoever, Tom Hanks. You
Tell
don't
me.
have to be famous to have a wonderful
Yeah.
story, right?
Mhm.
So I love that message from her. And so I connected with her. I said, this is how I got your name. Um, what's the process? What do we do here? So as she laid that out, then I love technology. I love that I was able to write this book by sitting at my computer, um,
Mhm.
sending it off to her digitally. Then she took it as a live document. She went through it. Um, I guess I was kind of expecting some critical editing, but that's not what she's about.
No.
That's not what she's about, right?
Yeah.
This is your story, and if that's how you're
Yeah.
telling it, then that's the way it's meant to be. So she corrected any of my late night grammatical errors that I had made, and sent it back to me. I went through it and I realized, okay, yeah, that piece belongs over here. I messed up on this piece and where'd the rest of that sentence go? But that was wonderful. It's all there digitally. I can correct it. I said to her close to the middle of December, she said, "What date are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking the end of April." And she said, "Oh, yeah, for sure we can do the end of April to get this in print." And she said, "You don't want it sooner?" Because for her, that was like, I can get this done sooner. And I said, "No, let's do the end of April." I picked that date mostly because it was very close to the anniversary of Lauren's passing. She died April 23rd, 2018.
Right.
But then after Lisa had sent me the book back and I had done all my corrections, I got in touch with her in January and I said, "I think I need to add another part."
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I told her in person. I didn't want to tell her over the phone or by email, but that's when I told her what was happening with my daughter Sarah, my stepdaughter, and she said, "Okay, yeah, that's fine. You fix it up however you need to. Send that other part back, and we'll see how it fits in."
Yeah.
We talked it over a little bit, but Sarah died February 8th, and I wrote the portion about Sarah through the month of March. And I'll tell you too that there's kind of a different edition to this book because there is an edition that belongs to me and that will never be seen by anyone else. But then there is the edition that's in print now.
Wow.
And so I took Sarah's portion of the story, I added it in and sent it off to Lisa. And by the end of April, it was in print. It was up on Amazon, and I had a box with 50 copies to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold those 50 copies within 2 days and ordered another 50. So, and I've had some sales on Amazon and
Yeah.
And
I
here we are.
had an opportunity to look at your Amazon, and I read a lot of the comments, and all of them were complimentary, but a lot of them were like, "This book is life changing. I bring your tissues."
Yeah.
An important story to tell, an important story to share. All kinds of comments like that. So I was wondering if maybe you could just, like, without telling us exactly what the book's about, maybe give us a little bit of a journey of what the book, is it a metaphor of what happened, or is it specifically the story about what happened to your children?
It is the story. It is a memoir. It is, yeah, it's about the relationship that my husband and I started with. It's about the relationship with our children. It is the story of what happened. I mean, I think it says on the back cover, I never aspired to be an author, or somewhere I wrote that. I never did aspire to be an author. It was never something. I don't see myself writing another book. I don't see another book in my future. I don't think I have another story in there.
Right.
But it just was something that was there and had to come out.
Yeah.
And now I've lost track of your question. What'd you say again, James?
I was just wondering if you could give us a little synopsis of the story, and you did. You just did a fabulous job of it, so no worries at all. We were talking about putting the joy in the story, and I was kind of hoping, I hope it's okay, maybe you could share a couple of stories about your two children, some of your joy, because you said that was so important. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
I would love to celebrate them.
Yeah. Lauren, at 12 years old, she was just coming out of, I mean, she was becoming, she was just really becoming. And she was starting her grade 7 year, so she had moved from the public or the elementary school into the senior public school. She was so independent, even from an early age. She was the kid that, okay, night, mom, turn off the light, see you later. The other two were so different. Mommy, stay, read me another book, stay until I fall asleep. And she's, no, no, I'm good, you can go. But that didn't mean that she wasn't lovey and cuddly. She was full of love for her family. She loved her brothers. She loved her sister so much, and family was so important to her. Um, she was always she was very justice was important to her too. So if she felt like someone was doing someone wrong, then she would let them know. I think a story about when I'd actually, this is a dad's story, but I had gone to Nova Scotia to visit family. I think I was going to a wedding. So dad took the kids camping, and she, ooh, sorry,
Oh,
something just popped up on my screen.
we're still here. Yep.
You
Okay,
can still
I'm
see
still here.
her.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
She
Something
went
popped up.
camping with her dad.
Camping with dad, and probably about 7 o'clock in the morning, she decided it was time to get up, but nobody else was up. And the next thing my husband feels is someone prying his eye open, and his wristwatch is now right in front of his eye. And she's saying, Dad, it's time to get up. Come on, Dad, get up. And like he's just trying to take in this wristwatch right in his face. But yeah. So that was Lauren. She was just, she wanted to take on the world, honestly.
Yeah.
She loved guides. She did brownies and guides, and she was a caring, beautiful human being.
Can
And
you tell the story about the grocery store that you told us in the green room?
and the grocery store, yeah, she noticed that there was some expired milk. She was about 4 years old, and we were walking through the grocery store. I just wanted to pick up a few items, and she says, Mom, that milk over there, it's expired. And I said, it's okay, Lauren, you're right. Great reading. But they've got staff that do that. There's a dairy guy that will probably come over and take care of that. No, I need to tell him. And I said, Lauren, I'm just gonna pick up the yogurt and we're gonna go. Next thing I know, I see her over there, and she's pulled one of the staff members over, and she's showing them all the expired milk. So
Yeah.
just love those little anecdotes about her.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a powerful,
And
powerful little girl from a powerful,
yes,
powerful mom. I
yes,
think that's just amazing. I am so, I don't know, I'm just so at awe by your strength. And I love that you're able to share the joy of your children and their memory, and you know what wonderful people they are.
thank you.
I love that you're sharing the book. So I think I'm going to ask two questions here. One, I think it's
Okay.
important that you tell us all, because when I look for your book online, it's kind of close to another title. So it's
Yeah,
but it is Ripples in the Pond, right?
yeah, like ripples. I can
Like
hold it up.
Ripples in the
Or
Pond.
is it going to be backwards? No, like ripples in a pond.
Perfect.
There
Yeah.
it is.
And it's
Yeah,
on
and you'll see.
Amazon, and it's
Yeah,
on, there's several different places that you can buy this book. Is it? Or no, just Amazon?
it's just on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's what I'm saying, that there is another book that has a similar title. So
yeah.
go to Amazon. The link is in this, and I'll make sure I post the link on the YouTube channel as well. Check it out. Buy the book. Check out the story. I think it's important that we share these stories. So Pat touched on an important question, and it's one that I dealt with recently. I had a friend who had cancer, someone I love very much. And my biggest problem was how to approach her, how to help her. What the hell do I do? Like, I don't know anything about what it's like for your family to deal with cancer. So I would imagine friends and family were probably feeling the same way. So my question to you, Karen, is what do you expect from us? What do you need? What do you want us to do? What, as a friend, I'm your buddy, what should I be doing to help you? A grieving mom or dad?
I think some of the most important things that people did are bringing food, um, bringing groceries. Uh, there's a website called Take Them a Meal, which is an amazing thing. It's essentially a framework for setting up a meal train for people, and you
Right.
just share the link. Once you've set it up, put all the information that's needed in there, and you can get people to go in and sign up. And Tuesday night we're going to bring a lasagna. Wednesday night someone's going to bring
Oh, that's
pulled
amazing.
pork, and so that was very, very helpful. Um, a neighbor coming over to cut the grass was a wonderful thing, right? I had friends that were saying, "Hey, let's go for a walk. We don't have to talk, or if you want to talk, I'll listen." And I think that's important. Um, Sometimes people get caught up in trying to tell you how they feel about what you're going through. And yes, it's important for people to hear that you have empathy and sympathy. Um, but sometimes just listening or letting there be some silence is good too. Just knowing that people are there. Um, Sometimes people try to equate what you're going through with something that's happened to them.
Mhm.
And I think people often see that or feel that they're empathizing. Um, but unless, I mean, you said you've lost your dad, Patrick, James, you've lost your
No,
parents. I can say I understand what it's like to lose a parent.
Right.
And so I can empathize with that. But
right.
if you said to me, I know exactly what you're going through, losing a child, goodness, that's horrible. I get that. I lost my 80-year-old aunt last week.
Right.
Not the same. I can still I can empathize with your grief and I understand, yes, you have lost someone that you love. But to say, I know what you're going through because
Right.
is not very helpful. So staying away from those types of things, those types of comments are more helpful.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen, what you
Sorry.
said for starting off was about the food thing, and it is amazing. I have had so many situations where you're dealing with everything in the world going on, and you come home and there's a care package, and there's something on the front porch, and someone has thought about you, and you just kind of take that big sigh, and you're like, "That's 20 minutes that I can do something else and focus on something else." And I remember thinking to myself when I would get those, just how powerful that was, and I thought that was kind of a uniquely me thing, just because of the people that I have in my world. But it's amazing to see that that's something that you identified first off, and the people that go out of their way to do that. There's just a special place for those people that identify that and go, I'm going to take that task. I'm going to take
Yeah.
that little weight, and that's a beautiful thing, and it's something that I would have never really thought of, right?
Mhm.
Until you're in it, and you're like, that lasagna was a lifesaver today.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And
I
we
think
had
cutting the grass is amazing too. Sorry.
yeah, that was exactly what we needed. We weren't thinking about that when Lauren's funeral was coming upon us, and we were having family come from different provinces to say one of the neighbors brought over toilet paper. It's like, yes, you're right. We need toilet paper.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
so just the simple things, sometimes just the basic things, because grief changes your brain so much. You're not thinking about those basic things.
I think that's amazing. You're absolutely right. I totally see like even the simple thing of food on the porch. Oh yeah, I should probably eat something, or I should probably
Yeah.
put it in the oven, or I should and coming home and having the grass cut and knowing that you walk by it every day and see it growing long, and maybe you don't care, but seeing it cut, I imagine, would be like just a joyous moment for you. It sounds like it's more about just being there, being around, being ready.
Yeah.
Not asking questions, not imparting wisdom, not saying, well, you should do this, you should do that. When it happened to my brother, he did this. It's more about showing up and saying, I'm here. What do you need?
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think, Karen, I am so happy that Lisa Browning met you, and I'm so happy that she met us and brought us together. She's a beautiful, kind, caring woman, and I loved how you talked about when she was editing your book. That's not who she is. You were absolutely right. We interviewed her, and the people who have seen that interview know that that's not who she is. She is absolutely kind soul who wants to help you tell her story. And I encourage anyone out there. I'm sorry, I'm going to plug Lisa right now. 1,000 Trees. Check her out. She's an amazing woman. And if you want to tell your story, your actual story, without someone else coming in and changing it on you, she's the person to go to. She's just a loving, wonderful person.
Yeah.
Karen, the work you do, writing the book, sharing that story, sharing just your journey would be enough, but you're also helping over 200 people, who knows, probably more, deal with their grief, and at the same time deal with your own grief. And I think you're a beautiful, wonderful human being, and I am so glad that I got to meet you. I really do mean that. I could not imagine the strength of character that you have, but I can imagine the strength of character your daughter had, seeing it through you. It's you're an amazing woman, and I'm so proud that you are here and doing all this great work. And I want to thank you. So at this time, we're going to kind of, I think we should kind of wrap up the show. So what we kind of do, which doesn't feel right, it never does when we talk about topics like this, but at the end of each show, we do a wrap up, and then we talk about words of wisdom. And sometimes we're funny about it. This time, I don't think we will be. But so I'll talk a little bit, and then I'll do my little words of wisdom. Pat will talk a little bit. He'll do his, and then it'll be you. You can talk about anything you want. You can tell us a story, and then give us a little bit of wisdom of anything, about anything. It's your moment. So coming up, profiteers out there, this Saturday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be on the amazing, terrific Raquel show, and we have an announcement to make. We have a fun project with CJ, Sia, and Raquel and Pat, and I'm pretty excited about it. And also, if you guys remember who Michael is, Michael Corvair, you might get a little hint of what we're about to do. It's going to be a fun project. I hope you join us. Grief is one of those hard things. It's one of those things that you shouldn't deal with alone. But if you are, I suggest you reach out to the Karen's wonderful organization, or to another organization, or you know what, maybe write. I know writing helped me too, and you don't have to write it for anybody, just write it for yourself. Sometimes just starting to tell your story is enough to ease the pain that you can move forward. But definitely, there are so many loving people out there. Karen is living, breathing proof of that. Reach out, because that's important. And all you profiteers out there, let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together.
So Karen, again, kind of, piggybacking on what James says here in the wrap up. I was just scrolling through the comments, all of these comments, and you're going to get a chance to watch these and read these afterwards. All of these comments are thanking you for your story, your strength. People are standing here and they're saying that I needed this tonight because I remember this, and maybe it's something I haven't totally dealt with, right? And this is your world, and this is the little bit of light that you're putting out there. And again, I thank you so much for what you do. We knew that tonight was going to be a bit of a tricky one. It was going to be a hard hitter. It was going to be something that was deeply emotional, and something that every one of these individuals that could watch this tonight could take something from. And James said about 200 people. There's no doubt in my mind that you've touched 200 people tonight alone, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And Karen, I thank you so much. Continue doing what you're doing. You're doing God's work. I think it's beautiful. Keep doing what you're doing. And my sign off is more about business and finance. But tonight, I think that's what it is. God bless you, Karen. I love what you do, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much. And this is where leave us with Karen's last word.
Well, thank you both so much for this opportunity. I do think it is so important that we allow grief to become part of the mainstream and so that we can understand what it is and people don't shy away from it anymore. I will say that I have a wonderful team that I work with the Compassionate Friends. So we do this together. And part of the words that come from Compassionate Friends, the international organization, is that as compassionate friends and parents, we need not walk alone. And that is so important to know that there are people out there that can help and want to help and are compassionate when it comes to grief.
Couldn't say it a better